All right, so today we are going to get into collections. A lot of you are walking around with collections still on your consumer report, holding you back from credit. All right, we're going to have a teachable moment when it comes to debt collectors today because there are a lot to be covered when it comes to collections of a debt. What debt collectors cannot do, um, what they're prohibited from doing. All right. Now, the first thing we're going to talk about up under collections is that collections is under the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. Okay, the FDCPA. It means the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. All right. First and foremost, before any collections can be furnished or placed onto your consumer report, the debt collector has to communicate with you before furnishing the accounts on your consumer report. During that time of communication from that debt collector, okay, you can request validation of debt. Validation of debt means that they have to send you paperwork to show proof that you actually owe the debt. Okay, I'm going to put it pulled up here so we can actually go over the section under the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act that covers validation. That section is under 12 CFR 1006. Okay, that's part 1006. And you can get to this section by going to the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. If you go through the website, you can go up under regulations and you'll be able to find this particular section. If not, you can actually find it also in the Fair Credit Reporting Act. That would be 15 USC 1692. All right. So give me one moment here while I actually get into the validation section of the act. And again, when it comes to validating debt, that's just the consumer sending a reply back to the debt collector who's trying to collect on the debt, asking them to show proof of them actually owing the debt. So we're definitely going to have a coachable moment today when it comes to debt collect. All right. Let me see here. All right, guys. So in section 1006.34, it says notice for validation of debts. A validation information required. 1. In general, except as provided in paragraph A2 of this section, a debt collector must provide a consumer with the validation information required by paragraph C of this section. Either 1, by sending the consumer a validation notice in the manner required by 1006.42. A, in the initial communication as defined in paragraph B2 of this section, or B, within 5 days of the initial communication, or 2, by providing the validation information orally in the initial communication. All right, so once you respond back, once that debt collector reaches out to you and say, hey, you owe $5,000 to ABC Network, how do you want to pay? We're going to respond and say, I don't recall owing no $5,000 to you. I need you to validate this debt. Okay. I need you to show proof that I actually owe you this debt. All right. So within 5 days of the initial communication, or after providing the validation information orally in that communication, that they have to provide us with the validation of debt. Okay. Two, as far as an exception, the only time really that a debt collector don't have to actually validate a debt, or when it's too late to validate a debt, is when they just go ahead and throw that collection onto your consumer report, and then you guys end up paying for it. But if you already paid for the debt, there's no reason to actually send you a validation letter. It's too late. Okay, so that's why when we look at these collections, we have to ask ourselves, okay, for one, did they even send you a notice, a letter saying that you owe the debt? How did you respond? You know, so just don't go and pay collections because you see that it's actually on your consumer report. For example, also a debt collector cannot just furnish an account, a collection account on your consumer report. They cannot just throw it on there. It is illegal. Again, they must communicate with you first. It's called a no parking rule. So first off, if they just threw it on there, did not reach out to you at all, you do not send a validation letter at this point. You're going to send a no parking rule letter. Okay, and that's pretty much saying that they did not communicate with you in regards to the collection of this debt, and that you refuse to actually pay the debt. You're going to request for a cease and desist during that period. Also in your letter. Now, as far as this validation, let's find out what should be included in the validation. Okay, what's required and what must be included within that validation. So, information regarding the debt. So the validation should include one, the debt collector's name and the mailing address at which the debt collector accepts disputes and requests for original creditor information, the consumer's name and mailing address if the debt collector is collecting a debt related to a consumer financial product or service as defined in 1006.2F, the name of the creditor to whom the debt was owed on the itemization date, the account number, if any, associated with the debt on the itemization date, or a truncated version of that number, the name of the creditor to whom the debt currently is owed, the itemization date, the amount of the debt on the itemization date, and itemization of the current amount of the debt reflecting the interest, fees, payments, and credits since the itemization date. A debt collector may disclose the itemization on a separate page provided in the same communication with a validation notice. If the debt collector includes on the validation notice where the itemization would have appeared, a statement referring to that separate page. All right. And then the current amount of the debt. So sometimes when we send out the validation letters, you see that the debt collectors, they only send out just a list of itemized payments. So it's like an itemized list of showing where you should be making payments. Like there's no contract. They don't have the original contract for one. So they will never send that to you because they don't have it. But they should be sending you the actual original contract that has the account number, the balance, a signature page where you signed off, where you signed off stating that, the debt was yours when the original account was created and things of that nature. Also, that there are lawsuits that have been placed out there that is actually illegal and that it's not acceptable just to have those itemized lists of charges, which is what they actually are, just itemized list of charges. They have to actually show physical evidence that you actually owe the debt. It has to be some kind of contract. It has to be in particular. It has to have the amount of debt, the actual charges, the account number, all that stuff has to be included in order for that debt to show that it's actually validated and that it belongs to you. Also, when it comes to debt collectors, that they cannot harass you. They cannot constantly harass you They can't blow your phone up all day. Um, they can't threaten you. They can't threaten to take you to court or anything like that when they're trying to actually collect on a debt. They can't threaten to take any action. Is what I'm trying to say. Take any action that cannot legally be taken or that they don't intend to take. So, say for instance, they say, "Hey, you owe this $5,000 debt. If you don't pay it, we're gonna take you to court." And then if you don't pay it and they don't take you to court, that is illegal. Um, let's see here. What else we have here? Also, y'all, there is they have time period debt. Okay, there is something that's called statute of limitations. You would have to look it up in your state. For example, here in South Carolina, the statute of limitations to collect on a collection or any account is 3 years. So look at your statute of limitations to make sure that these debt collectors are not past the statute of limitations that's in your state and still trying to collect on these debts. All right. Um, I had one more thing I was gonna tell y'all. It just slipped my mind. Also, a debt collector must not use any false, deceptive, or misleading representation in means in connection with the collection of any debt, including but not limited to the conduct described in paragraphs B and D. A debt collector must not falsely represent or imply that the debt collector is vouched for, bonded by, or affiliated with the United States or any state, including through the use of any beige, uniform, or falsified thereof. Any individual is an attorney or that any communication is from an attorney. They cannot do that. They cannot send you a letter stating that you owe the debt, and like the letter is from an attorney to kind of scare you guys. They cannot be deceptive when it comes to that. Documents are not legal process. They cannot be false and deceptive or misleading, saying that those documents have been legally processed or anything like that. They can't do that. Um, let's see here. Also, guys, when it comes to owing, say you have multiple debts up under the same debt collector, right? And say you send in a payment specifically asking for that payment to be made towards a certain account number. Like say if you have a medical collection that's on there, even though they're currently still illegal to furnish medical debt, they still do. But say, for instance, if you have four accounts from a hospital, all right, and all four of those are with Wakefield. If you send them a payment and you say, "Hey, it's for one of the accounts and not for three others," they must apply that payment to that one account. Just because they have four accounts listed up under your name with four different medical trying to say that you owe those four medical debts. They cannot just apply the payments to all four. Try to take a little bit out to apply it to all four. They have to apply it to that particular one. But the main thing is here, guys, is when it comes to debt collectors, before you even think about making a payment, let's make sure that they are actually in compliance with the law. Again, ask yourself when you see it. Check your consumer report, look in the collections section. If you see that you have collections, the first thing you ask yourself is, did I receive a notice about me potentially owing this alleged debt? If you did not, you want to make a dispute letter about the no parking rule. They just cannot furnish a collection account on your consumer report without reaching out to you. Okay. Also, when they do communicate with you in regards to the alleged debt that they say that you owe, if it does not look familiar to you, you can always respond back and say, "Hey, this alleged debt does not look familiar to me." You can refuse to pay the debt. Once you refuse to pay the debt, you can then ask them to cease and desist the collection. All right, so let's get these collections from off of our consumer reports. Let's stop holding them, making them hold us back from credit. All right, y'all have a good day.